Hi there, this is Dan Leberg for Street Eats. I'm here at Pure Spirits Oyster Bar in the Historic Distillery District with Executive Chef Jason Rosso. Chef, I was looking at your oyster menu and I realized that you have oysters from all over the world available. East Coast, West Coast, Kushi oysters from Japan. Which I guess makes oysters innately one of the world's most international foods, like since we can sort of eat it anywhere. How does the taste of oysters change as you move around the world?
Well, as with being an international food, it really is one of the only foods that are common to multiple cultures around the world. I mean, we have a lot of the same ingredients going all over the world, but oysters are always have been an interesting ingredient or an interesting food item that's as raw as they are, and as sort of you don't play with them much when you eat them. They're sort of similar to every different food culture. They assimilate to every food culture around the world in the sense that there's nothing to do to make sense to chuck them over and eat them, right?
Yeah.
It really varies depending on sort of the type of water they get. The sort of water flavor will define any oyster.
So it'd be similar to like the idea of terroir, like taking flavors from the earth and the sky in the case of the water.
Yeah, exactly.
So in particular, those Canadian oysters, how would you describe the difference in taste between East and West Coast?
Well, East Coast oysters, or West Coast oysters, sorry, you tend to get a more creamy and smooth, less salty type of oyster, whereas an East Coast oyster will be very sort of pungent. I mean, even if you swim in the Atlantic Ocean, swim in the Pacific Ocean, you can taste a whole different salt flavor in your mouth if you actually nothing.
I was flipping through the first chapters of Kitchen Confidential by Anthony Bourdain, the little life-altering moment of eating his first oyster. That was what made him love food. And do you remember your first oyster?
I do actually. Sorry, I was working in Toronto. It was 1990. I just got back from living in Japan, and I was working in the Metropolitan Hotel. And I worked for a really well-known chef at the time. His name is Niels Kelsen. European. She's a Finnish chef. Very tough, very sort of crazy European chef. Some stuff I've always stayed away from, like oysters. I've never tasted. Never eaten an oyster until I was 20. And so finally one day the chef said to me, "Let's go do an oyster tasting tonight." And those guys coming in from Roddy's time, because that's the only place to buy oysters at the time when in Toronto. He said to bring by oysters to sample. They bring oysters on the menu, and I want you to sample with me, right? And then, like the whole day, he tells me this is like I didn't start my shit, and I'm like freaking out. Like I have to eat these oysters. I was terrified to eat them. So anyways, the oysters show up, and we're sampling some Malpecs, we're sampling some Kumamotos, some Olympians, and Ballons, and Fin de Claire. So it's exactly the oysters you're trying.
Those are big flavors there, I guess.
Yeah, some huge, and it's again going back to the international. There's some Canadian stuff there, and there's some Japanese, and there's some French. So I say to the chef, "Listen, chef, like I've never really eaten oyster, and it doesn't really appeal to me because it's really something you got to get over in your mind, right?" And he goes, "You're eating oysters." I go, "No questions asked, that's it." And like you're not gonna argue with the chef, he's the boss, right? So anyways, he cracks me a bellon oyster, which is from France. I mean, they're like one of the biggest oysters you can get. So anyways, he gives me this bellon oyster, and it's like this big. So I'm holding it this, and he's like, "Eat it." I'm like, "I can't check." He's like, "Eat it." I'm like, no, he starts screaming at me. He's like, "Put it in your mouth, eat it." I'm like, all right. So I put it back in my mouth, and it's like takes up my whole mouth right now. My throat just locks right up. I can't swallow. My throat is small. So I'm like, and he's standing there in the kitchen slapping me on my back, right? Trying to get this oyster down. I'm like, and finally it just got down, but it was just like unbelievable.
If you were to bring two friends out for oysters, one who is very much a connoisseur, and someone else who's just beginning, you start them with the Malpecs, with something a little easier.
Yeah.
And then
I think that as an oyster connoisseur, I think that you can still appreciate oysters even in their most simplistic form, and their most sort of, I don't want to say vile or most maybe exaggerated form, you know. Whereas an amateur, as like people that are just starting to eat oysters, I mean, they're intimidating. They don't look really appetizing. You know, I think these look appetizing, but just by looking at it by nature, they don't look appetizing at all, and they're not cooked. They're still living.
Yeah.
And so for a connoisseur, a connoisseur will really enjoy an oyster from whatever region it comes from. Because in oysters, there's no real grading. It's like you can be an oyster expert, but it still means that you enjoy Malapecs or blue points and very, very, very simple oysters because they're just a great creation. Whereas an amateur will say, okay, I can eat the Malapecs or I can eat a blue point because they're a little more pleasing to the palate, or instead of jumping right into like a Fin de Claire or a Ballon or a Jäger's or something that's really strong.
I guess most oysters in Toronto right now are consumed at oyster bars like Pure Spirits or Rodney's or wherever. So people are coming to have oysters and have something to drink as well. We know that champagne is sort of the natural pair for an oyster. However, in terms of Toronto oyster bars, I mean, Toronto has the luxury of having an incredible community of independent breweries, like you have Mill Street right next door, you have Steam Whistle just a few blocks over, that and the Niagara wine region. Is there anything from in the area that you would especially recommend to try?
Well, I mean, I'm a wine and oyster drinker. I also like, depending on the day and mood I'm in, because I mean, oysters it's a mood food. So if it's a really hot day and I'm sitting outside and I'm eating oysters on a patio or something, I'll probably go for like a frosty pint of something, you know, maybe like the Mill Street Organic from next door, something kind of light, you know, or a Sleeman Original. Most of the time when I'm eating oysters, I generally like to drink like a really crisp white one, so long or chimney or something.
Yeah, so with yes, kind of still taste.
Yeah, and you get kind of a marrying thing as well. These all have a salty taste, but they're really fresh, they're really cold and stuff like that. They actually pair really well with something like so long. Especially in Niagara, so far, Niagara, like a Chardonnay, like an Anno Chardonnay.
Do you mind if I give something to try? Go for it. So, we'll just start with this one.
Yeah, perfect.
You can go no lemon or horseradish here.
No, you're gonna go raw.
Go for the real tip.
Yeah.
Real taste. Done this once before. Well, it's cool. That was a little bit creamier. You can taste the brine though.
You know what's funny is that the flavor of the oysters obviously is not necessarily in what the meat is, although the meat's indicative of the brine that it's in, but it's really about the brine. And this brine and juice and stuff is the mixture of what the seawater is and the location they come from. And that's what sort of naturally marinates the oyster, and that's what really makes it different. Oysters structurally look different, but chemically they're all made up of the same kind of textures, right? Whereas what you're tasting the brine, you're tasting the natural brine, the seawater, and that's indicative of the regions they come from. Yeah.
All right. I was getting like salt, like vegetable flavors.
Yeah, raspberry points. Yeah, that's PEIs. Yeah. Cool. Why don't you try a little bit of minging the sauce with it? Use the spoon there. Yeah.
And this is like the shallots and red wine
exactly.
vinegar.
Yeah, this is a classical garnish for oysters. So a mignonette sauce, which is basically shallots, red wine vinegar, and black pepper.
Okay.
Mixed together. It's almost like a vinaigrette minus the oil, so it's got some really acidic flavors to it. But then you got your horseradish, your lemon, your cocktail sauce, and we put a little bit of hot sauce with ours as well. So.
No, I'm not quite feeling brave enough for the hot sauce right now.
Yeah, I know the hot sauce is hot. So.
One day though. Yeah. You know what? I might get. Because they say you have to really try everything, right? That's the hot sauce. Yeah, that's definitely awesome.
Yeah, it's hot.
Chef, I'm gonna go cool my mouth down. Thank you very much for this.
No problem.
And
my pleasure.
This is Dan Leberg, 416-536-0981 for Street Eats. Cheers.